Cale, the main character, goes fishing with his dad at the beginning of the movie. While on their way home, they unfortunately have an accident, and his father died. 1 year later, the students will talk about their summer plans in a Spanish class. The teacher sees that Cale isn't paying attention and throws a whiteboard eraser at him. He then tells Cale that the one reason he won't punish him is based on what his late father might think. This makes Cale angry, and he punches his teacher. The next scene shows Cale in juvenile court after his father's death. He had many violent incidents even though he couldn't get away with his crimes. Because the judge knows how frustrated he is, he chooses not to send him to juvenile prison but to house arrest for 3 months during the whole summer. Later, at home, Detective Parker put his ankle monitor on him, warning him not to go more than 100 feet away from the home tracker. If he does, the monitor will quickly beep in red, giving him 10 seconds to get back inside before it turns back to green. When Parker asks his mother for the fee, he finds out that the other officer is his Spanish teacher's cousin. Parker tells Cale that 3 months may not seem like much, but if he thinks about how boring it could be to stay inside, he might get depressed. Instead of complaining, she suggests that he find things to do. Following Parker's advice, Cale starts playing video games every day. He could play Xbox, listen to music on iTunes, stream adult videos, be happy, and do nothing at home. Soon after, his mother comes back, and he talks to her. She turns off the TV because the house is so messy, and Cale calls her selfish. So she does something more dramatic by cutting off all the TV cable. This makes Cale start cleaning the house, even though he doesn't want to. In order to let out his frustration and find out what's going on outside, Cale contacts his best friend to talk about his coming days at home. He hears noises outside his house one day and goes to look out the window. Before he can get a good look, he hears their doorbell ring. Upon getting there, he noticed that a paper bag was set on fire. He steps on the paper to put it out, but then he realizes it's dog feces left by foolish boys as a prank. He is furiously chasing them and doesn't notice that his monitor is beeping. When it turns red, he runs back right away. After it turned green, he relaxed, and Officer Gutierrez stopped him for crossing the line and seeing Ashley, his neighbor's daughter. Cale falls in love with Ashley in the moment she sees him. Cale calls Parker after he gets freed from punishment. He thinks the officer has an advantage because they are family related, but Parker says the cop didn't arrest him and instead tells him to be more careful. He traces the lines in the compound so he won't cross it while he sees Ashley driving home in a car. He runs to his room right away and watches her take off her clothes. Soon after, his best friend Ronnie comes over. He shows Ronnie the view from his room while they talk. There is sex between Pilch, the first neighbor, and his maid every Thursday while his wife is training. Turner is next. He grinds his own property twice a day. Finally, he shows Ronnie his favorite view, which is Ashley. The next day, Cale attempts to get his mail out of the box. He stretches to get to his boundary and crawls through it to make sure his legs stay inside. Ashley helps him with his problem, and they start talking to each other for the first time. But she has to leave that night when her mother calls. The news is on for Cale, and there is a story about a girl who was taken. There is video of the kidnapper's car on the broadcast, but Cale eventually changes channels because the news isn't interesting. Following Ashley into her room with the binoculars, he makes up his mind. Some stretching exercises are being done while he watches her. She looks across and sees Cale hiding away. Then she remembers that she can't see him anyway because it's too late. He quickly falls asleep, but when he wakes up, he sees Turner coming back into his compound in a car that looks exactly like the one in the news story earlier. It also has a dead body in it. His mother soon starts to scare him by asking what he is doing. He feels uneasy and goes outside to get the newspaper. The next day, while confirms the car, he also tries to sneak into Turner's property. Turner goes up to him and asks if he is still in the area. It turns out Turner speaks to a rabbit, which makes him feel better. Later, he comes back and reads the news, which confirms that the recent kidnapping was the same as one done by a serial kidnapper in Texas who got away and their only find was an empty house. But Cale isn't interested because he is thinking about Ashley. Then Ashley getting ready to go swimming takes their attention away. By accident, Ronnie bumps into their binoculars, which makes them hide right away. As soon as he stands up to see if Ashley has seen them, she sees him. A short time later, there is a knock, and it's Ashley. They're excited to see her and she wonders why it took them so long to open the door. As she walks inside, she sees the binoculars and asks if they are watching the neighbors. To defend themselves, they say that all they are doing is keeping an eye on Turner because he is acting strangely. Some information about the car is shared, but when Ashley looks at it, she sees that Turner has changed the color and fixed the body. After that, they look through the other cases together. They get hungry quickly, so they decide to order pizza. When it gets dark, they start talking while Ronnie is asleep. Cale asked Ashley why she moved. Ashley said that it was supposed to keep her dad from cheating on her mom. So they decide to spy on Turner's house. They see him pull up in another car with a woman who Ashley recognizes as a club girl because she has a badge from the club on her hand. Turner holds a knife in his hand as he makes out with this girl. They think he wants to hurt her, but all he does is take off the tag from her clothes. Later, Ashley's mom calls, so she leaves and Cale follows. Cale goes back to his house and keeps watching his neighbors. The woman then starts screaming for help. He wants to record the event but accidentally turns on his flash, which lets Turner know what's going on. He hides right away and starts to use his camera to check, but Turner looking at his camera scares him. Ronnie's phone starts to ring, and it's actually him. As soon as Cale tells him what he saw, the woman drives off. Turner comes to his house in the morning while he is making breakfast. His mother told him that the tire leaked when she went to the store, and Turner helped her right away. That's how he and his mother met. This must have made Cale mad because he thought Turner was a psycho. Turner wants to know why he is being punished when his mother is not around. Cale says he hit his Spanish teacher, and Turner says he has the same thought about hurting more than one teacher when he was at school. Later that night, Ashley has a party at her house. Cale can't make it, so he watches her through the window and gets angry when he sees someone with Ashley. In response, he makes the party less enjoyable by playing loud music from a window. This makes Ashley approach him and say she will throw away his pod if he doesn't say he was spying on her. Cale tells her that he has been watching her around since she got there, and she gets excited instead of mad. As soon as they're done making love, they see Turner carrying a blue bag into his car. The next day, Ronnie breaks into Turner's car while Ashley follows him around the mall because they think it is a body. Unfortunately, she lost sight of him. Later, she found him in the parking lot. She was scared that he would hurt her, but he just told her he needed a little privacy. Meanwhile, Ronnie slips his phone in Turner's car by mistake. In the next scene, Cale watches from home as Ronnie goes into Turner's garage to get the phone. Cale suggests that they look into it after Ronnie admits that he smells something awful. But the garage door starts to shut. Cale runs to Turner's house because he thinks Ronnie is trapped there. Alerting the police, Cale suspects Turner of murder when they arrive. Even so, the blue bag shows a dead deer that Turner hit by accident. Later that night, Turner doesn't press charges because Cale's mother went to say sorry to him. Cale gets a call from Ronnie, which makes him mad because he thought Ronnie was dead. He then decides to watch the video again and finds the body of the dead girl. Meanwhile, Turner attacks his mother and knocks Ronnie down. Turner takes aim at Cale, who attempts to call the police but gets grabbed back. Turner ties him up at home and plans to take on Cale for all of his crimes. He tells Cale to write a letter of confession. Cale says no and hits him. Ashley then jumps in to help and hides from Turner. Turner soon breaks down the door, but they jump to Ashley's pool, setting off his alarm. The police officer decides to finish his meal first, though, before going to see them. Cale goes back to Turner's house to look for his mom. He fell into a pool that had many dead bodies in it, which turned out to be the Turner's victims. His mother is hanging in one of the rooms when he comes out. The cops who show up at Turner's house are killed by him. Turner was already there when Cale rescued his mother, which surprised him. Turner tries to hit Cale, but Cale's mother stops him by slicing Turner's leg to protect him. Then Cale starts fighting Turner, eventually beating him and throwing him into the pool of dead bodies. After he and his mother leave the house, Parker comes back to take off his anklet and tells him he is the first kid to be let out for good behavior. After some time, Cale leaves his house to find Ashley. At the end of the movie, Ronnie films them as they share an intense kiss. Thank you for coming, and don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next video.